What if one of the most common ingredients in your kitchen, something you use almost every single day, was quietly putting extra strain on your heart? Not overnight, not in a way you would immediately notice, but slowly, over time. Because here's the reality most people don't realize. Some of the biggest risks to your heart don't come from rare or extreme things. They come from small, daily habits that feel completely normal, things you've been doing for years, without ever questioning them. I've had patients sit across from me and say, "Doctor, I don't understand. I eat normally. I'm not doing anything extreme." And they're right, they're not. But what they don't realize is that one simple ingredient, used every day, often without thinking, may be adding more pressure on their heart than they ever imagined. My name is Dr. Adrian Keller, and after years of working with patients, one pattern shows up again and again. It's not one big mistake that affects the heart, it's what we do, consistently. In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly what that ingredient is, where it's hiding, and what it may be doing inside your body over time. Because once you see it, you won't be able to ignore it. Let's take a closer look. Not long ago, I sat down with a patient who told me something I hear very often. "Doctor, I don't understand. My blood pressure has been creeping up, but I haven't changed anything." He was 62 years old, not sedentary, didn't consider himself unhealthy. He wasn't eating fast food every day. He wasn't doing anything extreme. In his mind, his routine was normal. But as we talked more, I started asking about the details. What he ate for breakfast, what he had for lunch, the snacks in between, the foods he thought were harmless, and that's where things started to become clear, because it wasn't one obvious problem. It wasn't a single bad meal or a drastic lifestyle issue. It was something much more subtle, a pattern, a small habit, repeated every day, something he had never questioned, because it didn't feel unhealthy. And this is exactly what I see in so many patients. They're not making extreme mistakes. They're simply following routines that over time begin to put pressure on the heart. According to organizations like the American Heart Association, daily habits, especially those related to diet, can have a significant impact on blood pressure and overall cardiovascular health over time. And the most surprising part? Many of these habits don't come from what people add to their food. They come from what's already inside it. So let's talk about that ingredient. Because once you recognize it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. That ingredient is salt. More specifically, too much sodium. And before you think, "Wait, I don't even use that much salt," that's exactly where most people get it wrong. Because the problem isn't just the salt you add to your food, it's the salt you don't see. The salt already built into everyday foods, foods that most people eat without thinking twice. Bread, sauces, processed meals, packaged snacks, even foods that don't taste salty at all. And that's what makes this so easy to miss. You're not sprinkling more salt, but you're still consuming it every single day. In fact, most people consume far more sodium than they realize, often without ever picking up a salt shaker. And according to organizations like the American Heart Association, excess sodium intake is closely linked to elevated blood pressure, one of the most important risk factors for heart disease. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Salt itself is not the enemy. Your body actually needs sodium to function properly. The issue is how much and how often. Because when sodium intake stays high over time, it begins to affect how your body manages fluid and how much pressure is placed on your blood vessels. And that's where your heart starts to feel the difference. Now, let's break down exactly what that looks like inside your body, because this next part is where most people start to connect the dots. The first and most important effect is increased blood pressure. And this is where things become very real for your heart. Because when you consume too much sodium, your body begins to hold on to more water. That extra fluid doesn't just sit there, it moves through your bloodstream. And as the volume of fluid increases, the pressure inside your blood vessels rises. I explain it to my patients like this. Imagine a garden hose. If you increase the amount of water flowing through it, the pressure inside that hose goes up. Now imagine that pressure, not for a few seconds, but day after day, month after month, year after year. That's what elevated blood pressure does to your body. And your heart is the one pushing against that pressure, every single beat. Over time, this forces the heart to work harder than it should, not suddenly, not dramatically, but consistently. And that constant extra effort is what can begin to wear the system down. According to the American Heart Association, high sodium intake is one of the key contributors to high blood pressure, which remains one of the leading risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Now again, this doesn't mean that one salty meal is going to harm your heart. The issue is chronic intake over time, because your body adapts. It tolerates more and more and more, until one day the numbers start to change. And by then, it often feels like it came out of nowhere. Now let's look at the second way excess sodium affects your body, and this is something many people can actually see happening. The second effect is fluid retention, and this is something many people notice, but rarely connect to what they're eating. You might see it at the end of the day. Your shoes feel tighter, your socks leave deeper marks around your ankles, your feet or legs look slightly swollen, and most people assume, I've been standing too long. It's just the heat. It happens sometimes. And again, sometimes that's true. But when sodium intake is consistently high, your body holds onto more fluid than it needs, because sodium affects how your kidneys regulate water balance. More sodium means more water retained in the bloodstream and tissues, and that extra fluid has to go somewhere. Often, it settles in the lower parts of your body, your feet, your ankles, your legs. But here's what most people don't realize. That extra fluid isn't just sitting in your tissues, it's also increasing the volume your heart has to manage. I explain it like this. Imagine your heart as a pump. Now imagine that pump having to move not just the normal amount of fluid, but extra fluid, all the time. It doesn't stop working, but it has to work harder, every beat. According to organizations like the American Heart Association, excess sodium intake can contribute to fluid retention and increase the workload on the heart, especially over time. And just like with blood pressure, this doesn't happen overnight, it builds gradually, which is why so many people see the swelling, but never connect it to the cause. Now let's look at where this sodium is actually coming from, because this is the part that surprises almost everyone. Now here's the part that surprises almost everyone. Most people think their sodium intake comes from the salt they add to food, but in reality, that's only a small part of the problem. The majority of sodium people consume is already inside the foods they eat every day, hidden in plain sight. Bread, one of the most common foods in the world, often contains significant amounts of sodium, even though it doesn't taste salty. Processed meats, ham, turkey slices, sausages, these are some of the highest sources of sodium in a typical diet. Sauces and condiments, ketchup, salad dressings, soy sauce, just a small amount can contain more sodium than you expect. Packaged and ready-made meals, convenient, quick, and often loaded with sodium to preserve flavor and shelf life. Even foods labeled as healthy or low-fat can still be high in sodium, and that's what makes this so difficult to manage, because people aren't necessarily choosing salty foods, they're choosing common foods. Everyday foods. And according to the American Heart Association, a large portion of daily sodium intake comes from processed and packaged foods, not from salt added at the table. I tell my patients this all the time. You're not overusing salt, you're over-consuming it without realizing it. And once you start paying attention, you begin to see it everywhere. Labels, ingredients lists, serving sizes, and that awareness is the first step to making a real change. So now that you know where it's coming from, the next question is, what can you actually do about it without turning your entire lifestyle upside down? The good news is that this is something you can actually control, and you don't need to eliminate salt completely to protect your heart. The goal is not zero. The goal is awareness and balance, because even small adjustments can make a meaningful difference over time. The first thing I recommend to my patients is simple. Start reading labels, not obsessively, just enough to become aware of how much sodium is in the foods you eat most often. You might be surprised how quickly it adds up. Second, try to reduce processed foods when you can. You don't have to change everything overnight, but replacing even 1 or 2 highly processed items in your daily routine with simpler, less processed options can significantly lower your sodium intake. Third, be mindful of portion sizes, because even foods that seem reasonable can become high in sodium when consumed in larger amounts. And finally, give your taste buds time to adjust. When you gradually reduce sodium, your palate adapts. Foods begin to taste different. You start to notice natural flavors more, and what once felt normal may begin to feel overly salty. According to recommendations from organizations like the American Heart Association, even modest reductions in sodium intake can help support healthier blood pressure levels over time. And that's the key. You don't need perfection, You need consistency, because what you do every day matters far more than what you do once in a while. Now let's bring everything together, because this final part is where it all connects. So let's bring this together. The issue isn't salt itself. Your body needs sodium to function. The problem is how much of it we consume, often without realizing, and over long periods of time, because what seems small, a piece of bread here, a sauce there, a packaged meal, adds up, day after day. And over time, that can begin to affect your blood pressure, your fluid balance, and the workload placed on your heart. Not suddenly, but gradually, quietly. And that's what makes it easy to ignore. But now, you're aware of it. And awareness is where change begins. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to eliminate everything. But paying attention, making small adjustments, and being more conscious of what you consume daily can make a meaningful difference over time. If this video helped you, share it with someone you care about, a friend, a family member, someone who might be going through the same thing without realizing it. And if you want more clear, practical insights like this, focused on helping you understand your body and protect your health, make sure to subscribe. I'm Dr. Adrian Keller. Stay aware, stay consistent, and take care of your heart. I'll see you in the next video.